Hello and welcome back to Russ's Movie Corner. My name is Russ, and as you can see, I am sitting in front of my movie corner. I have my King of Kings movie right next to me, my Guarding the Galaxy t-shirt on, and judging by the frame around me, we are back to the Emma Thorne video. And this is my second time recording this. The first time it kind of, my computer, again, like sometimes it does, it decided to try to take a dump on me. So, it didn't record the actual video of Emma. It recorded the webcam, but it didn't record the video. So, I'm having to redo this. Anyway, there's a couple things that I want to get to before we start. First is, I'm going to do this all in one fell swoop. Just going to get this done, get it over with, and be done with it. The second one that I'm going to do, I'm going to do kind of a recap. So this might be a longish episode. Just know that I'm going to try to get done. There's about 2 minutes and 20 seconds left. She starts to go into her outro, so I'm going to kind of let it play until it gets to that point, and then we'll go ahead and do that. Okay? So, without any further ado, let's jump into this. Last time, she was talking about how she sent a email out to Ace Christian Education, and basically said, I'd like to know more about, your project, and I'd like to know, I have a few things that I'd like you to talk about. But as I stated, they don't have to respond to you, Emma. If they didn't respond to a mainstream media source, why would they respond to you? Because they have no reason to believe that you're going to be any more honorable than they are. Especially if they look at this video. I mean, because all they'd have to do would be to just go to YouTube and search out, Emma Thorne, and they see this and they go, well, I mean, if she's going to be this disingenuous to people, why would we care? If that makes sense. Okay, so I don't know if she really understands that at all. She just has to kind of think about that and say, is this something that I think might be, interesting or might be good? So let's go ahead and jump back into this, and then, like I said, I'll just kind of stop it every once in a while and kind of talk about it.
It's one or the other. Probably, if we're being honest, it's probably a healthy mix of both. Just to very briefly deal with this then, the why are there still monkeys, or in this case, why are there still fish, question, sort of, the real answer is, why shouldn't there be? Why would there not be, It interprets evolution as this series of consecutive progressive steps, one after the other. One thing changes into another thing, changes into another thing, changes into another thing. And really, it's much more complex than that. The easiest...
No, it's not. So, your theory, okay, tends to... You have two different sides to the theory. Because on the one hand, you say everything progressed, and you say that, like, there was some ape-like ancestor, okay, even though you don't know what that looks like, you don't know what that is, you have no idea how it works, you just say there's some ape-like ancestor that we used to have, and it progressively went from, like, hunched over with narrow hips and wide knees and all this kind of stuff, and they, the foot, the thumb on the foot was, the big toe was kind of way back because they're grasping at tree limbs, and then it moved to the next step, and then it moved to Australopithecines, then it moved to this, then it moved to that, then it moved to Homo erectus, then it moved to Homo neanderthalis, then it moved to Homo sapiens. That's what your theory states, Emma. Okay? So which is it? Which is it? Is it a series of slow progressive steps in that direction? Or is it punctuated equilibrium where it goes various ways at different times and like some monkey popped out a human? Or popped out Homo erectus or something like that. But what does your theory state have to happen to the previous species? Like, why is there no Homo erectus? Why is there no Homo neanderthalis? Well, didn't they have to die to make room for Homo sapiens? Or, in this case, if it was Homo erectus, Homo neanderthalis? Considering that Homo neanderthalis and Homo erectus have human DNA. They're just a little bit shorter humans and a little bit older humans. Because your brow ridge and your cranium never stop growing throughout your lifetime. We just don't live long enough anymore for our cranium to actually grow anymore. But it never stops growing. Okay? So, yeah, why would two supposed evidences for your theory have perfect matched human DNA? And it's not different DNA, it's human DNA. So it's not like, oh, it's slightly human DNA. No, it's human DNA. Okay? When they typed it and crossed it, they went, oh, this is exactly like humans. But they don't report that. Why don't they report that? Well, because if they report that, that means that your theory is bunk. But it goes back to the question of, why are there still fish if the fish turned into frogs? Why did some fish decide, oh, I like it down here, and other fish decide, I'm going to turn my fins into legs? That doesn't make any sense. Why did they become air breathers? Why didn't they just keep breathing water? That doesn't make any sense either. Okay? Your theory doesn't make any sense because it doesn't talk about how did these things come about. And when you try to ask them how they come about, they just turn around and go, oh, well, this doesn't mean anything. You're misinterpreting everything. It's more complex than that. Because they don't have an answer for it. And if they don't have an answer for it, they're definitely going to just run off. And it's really pathetic. It really, really is pathetic.
Way to think about evolution is a branching tree. I found a good article in Overcoming Obstacles to Understanding Education in Biomed Central that I quite like that explains this quite well. So I'll leave a link for you down below and I'll share with you the analogy that they use. Perhaps the easiest way is through the analogy of human family categories, especially that of cousins. Students often don't recognise they have two classes of relatives in their own family: lineal and collateral. The progressive ladder model of evolution highlights only the lineal relatives: grandparents, parents, children, grandchildren, etc. I can hear a cat screaming outside. Maybe it was a child? Is it weird if I can't tell the difference? Anyway, however, collateral relatives such as cousins, aunts, nephews, and so forth are also family members. In any large extended family, it's likely the majority of relatives will be collateral rather than lineal ones. So too in the extended family of all living things.
No. So, I'm about to say some very controversial things. Now, I'm not condoning this behavior, so don't sit there in my comment section and go, oh, he's condoning incest or he's condoning bestiality. Shut the fuck up, I'm not. Okay? I'm saying that it is possible. Now, what it is possible to do is, if you have a sister or a brother, if you're female, okay, it is possible for you to procreate with that person. Not saying you should. In fact, you shouldn't, because it's not going to be pretty, okay? The child that comes out is not going to be pretty. That's why they call it inbreeding. But you can. You can also have procreation with aunts, uncles, cousins, and we're all like 14th cousins anyway, in terms of humanity, okay? But, that being said, there has been documented cases of bestiality, of people having sex with other animals. But why are there no centaurs? Why are there no half-ape, half-human children? Like, Congo suggested. Okay? Again, I'm not saying you should do that. In fact, it's illegal in most countries and it's very, very disgusting. Don't do that. And it's also wrong in the Bible. But the reason why we cannot procreate with animals is because our number of genes in our cells, okay, and specifically in our sex cells, are different. In fact, they're so different that you cannot interbreed two different kinds of animals. For instance, a dog and a cat. You can't get a cog or a dat, okay? It doesn't work like that. Now, you can breed a tiger and a lion, and you can get ligers and tigons, depending on which one's the male and which one's the female. You can crossbreed a whole bunch of different horses and donkeys, and you can get mules and zorses and zebra, and zeonies and all this other kind of stuff. And like if you crossbreed a horse and a donkey, you get a mule, and the mule is sterile. You cannot breed the mule, okay? You cannot have another, if it's a female mule, you cannot have a male come up and mate with it and produce an offspring. It's sterile, okay? It does not have any sex gametes at all. It is, for all intents and purposes, a dead end. Because it just doesn't, the reproductive system just doesn't work, okay? But you can breed those two together and get that. But you can't breed a cow and a whale. But yet, these people in the evolution theory want to state that Bossy the cow evolved into Blowhole the whale, but yet they don't have any fossil evidence that that ever happened. None whatsoever. Okay? What they have is what she's talking about. Lines on paper. They don't even have bones in the dirt to back up that assertion. Okay? Oh, they'll try. But they'll say, well, see, in this layer right here, we see this one animal, we see a partial skeleton of an animal that might be something that's like in between a whale and a cow. But, see, when we Christians ask them, what does this half-cow, half-whale hybrid look like? What's the first thing they say? And I can already hear the fingers on the keyboards from the atheists. You know what they're going to say? That's not how evolution works. Meh. Yeah, it is. Because otherwise, how would it have worked? How would you have gone from a cow to a whale? Because at some point, you have to have some half-cow, half-whale that has flippers and legs, and it can't swim and it can't walk. And it would die before it had a chance to procreate and pass on any more genetic mutations. Sorry, it doesn't work. Ever. And they know that, but because they cannot come up with any kind of a transition between the two that seems plausible, they just yell and scream at us about, oh, you're misrepresenting science! Exclamation point trademarked. That's bullshit. That's not an answer. In fact, it's the Dillahunty dodge. It's going straight around the answer. Because you don't have an answer for it.
And then there's a useful diagram here which I will include for you. There isn't this line of monkey, ape-like ancestor, chimpanzee, then human.
Actually, there was. For the longest time. And it was in every single classroom. Okay? And you can still find charts out there that show a chimpanzee transforming into a human. Okay? And not so long ago, like 20 years ago, okay, that line over there, that's what it was. Okay? Now, she's going to say that there's a line, because I'm kind of blocking it out a little bit, that there's a line that goes up to humans, and then there's a branch that says chimpanzees, and there's a branch that says monkeys. Okay? And she's going to say, see, this is how it works. See, there was some ape-like ancestor, and then monkeys came off of that, and chimpanzees came off of that, and then we evolved into humans. You still end up with a linear progression, because at some point, okay, they have to branch off and become a chimpanzee. But what is that transitional fossil? You don't even have that. Again, you just have lines on paper. You've just drawn lines and said, see, we have this branch here that goes to humans, and then we have this branch off of that goes to chimpanzees, and this branch off of that goes to monkeys. But if we're the same kind as a primate, like chimpanzees, monkeys, apes, gorillas, that kind of stuff, then why can't we mate with them? Again, not saying you should. I'm asking the question, why can't we do it? It used to be that when they started the Human Genome Project, that chimpanzees and humans had a 2% DNA difference. That's when they started, okay? Now it's more like 15 to 20%, which we're talking now millions of base pairs difference, okay? Plus, they have a different chromosome count than we do, which means that we, somewhere along the line, and they don't know how to explain this, but somewhere along the line, somehow, chimpanzees develop more base pairs or less base pairs. I don't remember exactly which. Okay? But we can't mate with them. Because if we were truly primates, okay, if we as humans, Homo sapiens, were truly primates, then we would be able to mate with other primates. Right? Just like other cats can mate with other cats. Just like other dogs can mate with other dogs. Okay? Cows can mate with other cows and buffalo and all that kind of stuff. You have all these different kinds of animals that are up around the family level that they can mate with. We're not like apes. We're nothing like apes. We look nothing like apes. We act nothing like apes. Okay? And yet, these people want to sit there and be like, oh yeah, we're apes. No, we are made in the image of God. And God made us unique in the animal kingdom. And that's the reason why he told people in the book of Leviticus, don't lie with animals, you morons. That's an abomination. Because now we're debasing ourselves into nothing more than animals. Do you get it yet? And that's what secular humanism teaches. That's what atheism and evolution teaches, is that we're no better than animals. But they have no proof of that.
Rather, we are all relatives in the same family tree,
no,
so to speak. That is something that is quite easy to misunderstand if you have had a basic education, if you are very young, not, I would argue, if you are writing a scientific textbook.
Actually, no, Emma. If I'm writing a scientific textbook, and I take a long, hard look at your theory, okay, and I find that there is a lot wrong with that theory, why would I want to put it in my textbook? Okay? Now, I might put a basic version of evolution, like I got in Catholic private school, okay? I got a basic version of evolution. They told us this is what, this is what science, okay? And I'm just quoting, not doing the not doing the exclamation point trademark. I'm just saying science, this is what they say happened. Now, we as Catholics/Christians, we believe that, that it wasn't that way. We believe that, God created the earth in 6 days, and he created humans on the sixth day. He created all the animals, he created all the things. But here's this theory, and they say that this is what happened. Okay? We got both. And she's going to go back into this in a few minutes. But we got both. And we were allowed to make up our minds about what we wanted to believe. Did we want to believe that there was millions of years between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2? Well, then that's up to you. It's not biblical, but some people believe that. Okay? It's a heresy, but if they want to believe it, go ahead. More power to you. I'm not stopping you. Okay? The problem comes in is when this kind of cult-like behavior of, well, they're not teaching science! Exclamation point, trademark. That's cultish behavior.
Textbook claiming to be part of a scientific curriculum, it is appalling for that kind of basic misunderstanding of evolution to be included in any argument for or against it. It's
Actually, no, it's not, because it's teaching the weaknesses of the theory. The weaknesses that you don't want to acknowledge. Because they're trying to ask a question. A legitimate question. If fish evolved into frogs, why are there still fish? Because the fish would have had to die off to make the frogs, right? Why are there still fish? What fish turned into frogs and lizards and other things? How did those lizards and frogs then turn into other animals? That's the questions that these people are asking that you don't have an answer for. You don't want to answer it, so you're going to stand there and say, oh, they're just misrepresenting science! Exclamation point, trademarked. And yes, I'm using that as a punch at science, because that's what they are doing. Because scientists, as I've stated many times before, when you watch this film, science is starting to act like a cult. They're starting to act like Scientologists or Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses. They're starting to act like a cult. They're starting to push this notion of, if you don't believe in our science, exclamation point, trademarked, then you're an enemy of everything and progress, and you don't understand anything in the world, and you're just a conspiracy theorist. In fact, she even calls people conspiracy theorists in another couple minutes.
It's just appalling. That should not be legal. It shouldn't be allowed.
Actually, you can't decide what is legal or not in terms of what's being taught to children, because that is dictatorial. I didn't mention this in the last part, and when I filmed this previously, and I should have. My bad. That is dictatorial. To say, if you don't believe in science and you're not going to teach this theory of evolution that we have no evidence for, by the way, but you have to teach it, and you have to teach it as if it is absolute fact, and if you don't, then you go to jail. Because it shouldn't be legal. That is a dictatorship. That is a path to tyranny. Okay? That is exactly what happened in Germany in the 30s. It is exactly what happened in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s in the Soviet Union. It's happening in communist China right now. If you don't believe that communism is the best thing ever, you go to jail. If you don't believe in atheism and evolution, you go to jail. You go to concentration camps. It's happening right now in communist China. The Uyghur Muslims refuse to give up Islam, and they're being worked to death in concentration camps in China. Emma, no. That is wrong. That is absolutely wrong. Now, you can put forth educational standards that say you must teach a certain level of evolution, and people have to abide by that if they want their program to be taught in your school system. But you do not have the right to tell people what to think. and how to teach. That is tyrannical.
Those were all my questions. I got an automated response saying we will aim to get back to you within 5 working days. If I hear back, there'll be an insert here, or if I don't hear back till late, there'll be a pinned comment. Again, they didn't get back to one of the biggest news broadcasters in the UK. They're probably not going to get back to me, Muggins here, but I tried. I think it's only fair to try. I'm going to finish up with another...
Okay. I respect the fact that, she wanted to try to reach out to Christian schools and say, hey, I have these questions. But again, if a person were to want to talk to a news outlet, typically they're not going to do it through a written statement. What they're going to try to do is they're going to try to go on to a news program where they can talk so that they can get their point across. And if somebody tries to twist it around or tries to, throw it back in their face, they can go, wait a minute. No, that's not what I said. See, I said this, not that. But the problem with printing something, problem with like writing out a statement and then sending it to someone, is that that person then can take one sentence out of that whole entire statement and twist things around, like atheists and evolutionists do with the Bible all the time. Like they'll open up the Bible and they'll say, "Oh, see, it says right here, slaves. It says, slaves have to do this, blah blah blah. We can't. Bible condones slavery." No, it doesn't, because that's not what the slavery was. Okay. And also, it wasn't the slavery, because the people are looking at slavery from the lens of, like, 17th and 18th century slavery here in America, which was horrible. Don't get me wrong, it was crap. Okay, and there were churches that actually like cut parts out of the Bible to create something called the Slave Bible that they would give to slaves, where it basically was like, slaves obey your masters, and like they cut out, the parts like where Jesus was talking about breaking chains and all this kind of stuff and being free from sin, because they didn't want to do that. They were like, no, we don't want people to look at this kind of stuff. But see, the problem is that we're not teaching, here in America at least, we're not teaching slavery from the standpoint of, there's been slavery down through the ages, there's still slavery today. Here's the kind of slavery that we had when our nation was first founded, and we fought this civil war over it, and we freed the slaves. Here's the Jim Crow laws. Here's the civil rights movement. We're not teaching. We're trying to teach it from the place of victimhood. You're probably descended from slaves. Ha ha ha. See, you're oppressed. And see, you're white. Oh, you must have been a slave owner. Ha 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 ha. That's backwards oppressive thinking. Okay? Because it's trying to teach people that, see, you're probably descended from slaves, so you're still a victim. And see, you probably descended from slave owners, so you're oppressive. That's bullshit. Okay? Because no one alive today has owned slaves. Ever. In their life. Ever. Except maybe the Democrats working in government that keep people enslaved. Because they oppress businesses, and they oppress the economy so much that people have to get out of the workforce, and so they have to rely on the government for money. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm saying that when you force people to live off the government, then the government gets to run their life and gets to tell them what they can and can't do. And that's a form of slavery. There is human trafficking happening on the U.S. southern border right now. It's a form of slavery. We're not talking about that. We should be, but we're not. So, Emma, no. Stop this. Okay? You haven't shown one single thing to back up your point. You've cherry-picked one article with one person's experience, and that's it. Okay? You've cherry-picked a couple of pictures out of, like, probably a couple of sample pages on the ACE website. That's not doing a proper review of anything, and that's not showing people, here's problem A, here's problem B, here's problem C. And then you wonder why they're not going to talk with you.
Dr. Scaramanga's comments, because I think this is really good and important. She argues that nationally recognised qualifications such as GCSEs and A-levels should be a requirement. I agree. While I certainly don't believe that our education system is perfect, and in many ways I would like to destroy it and rebuild it from the ground up. What can I say? I'm a person coming from the arts. Regardless, having institutions to safeguard the basic education that children need is fundamentally very, very important, and at least that is a benefit of having a religious school within the system, as opposed to this religious education curriculum which is so hands-off and so flagrantly untrue in what it claims to be science. At least if a school is in the system, it is beholden to certain regulations.
Okay. Again, I will ask the question. What would you consider to be a broad and balanced science education? Because science is things that we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate. Right? Can we all agree on that? Can we observe evolution? No. Because speciation does not equal evolution. Can we study evolution? Well, arguably we could, if we want to believe the lines on paper and bones in the dirt that don't really mean much. Can we test it? Not really. Because again, every time we say that we have never done this in a laboratory, then they say, well, that's because we never have enough time. What is that supposed to mean? Okay? And can we demonstrate evolution? Again, speciation is not evolution. Okay? And the problem is that now you're saying, and the evolutionists have gone out and they have redefined the word theory in the context of science, exclamation point, trademarked, as a law. I've had people write that in my comments section. Oh, don't you know that evolution is a law? And I'm like, no, it's not. It's never been proven. Oh, but they rewrote theory to make it sound like it's a law. See? And then they send me to some page, and then it's like, and I'm like, yeah. So, you people that say we shouldn't believe this book because it was, quote, written by men, unquote, want to believe what men write. Hypocrite much? I mean, aside from, how would God have written it if he didn't use men? I mean, I guess God could have written it himself, as he did the Ten Commandments, but the point being, if God didn't use men to write his words down, how would he have transmitted his message to people? Because would we have believed it if it just appeared on a piece of paper? Like, for instance, if I took this piece of paper and I said, the words one day magically appeared on this paper, and I sat and watched it, would you believe me? Probably not. Okay? So, but if I tell you that a human wrote this under divine inspiration from God, that's a little more plausible. Maybe not to your uncaring, unfeeling mind, but to a lot of Christians out there, okay, that's enough for us. Because we believe in God, we believe in Jesus, and we believe that this was divinely written and inspired by God. Okay? Through men. We understand that, and we get that, and we're not trying to change anything to make it different. The problem comes in when you say, here's the origin of species, and it was written by a man, and he knows what he's talking about, whereas these people who wrote the Bible were ignorant and stupid, and they didn't know what they were talking about. Even though most of them were learned and very, very highly intelligent people. Okay? Because that's something you're willingly ignorant on. It wasn't written by ignorant shepherds or cave-dwelling people. It was actually written by intelligent, highly intelligent, learned people. Okay? Because back then, only certain people knew how to read and write. Most things were either done through memorization or oral transmission until people started writing things down. And then, like in the Hebrew, I know, in the Hebrew, the way that they would write it is they would actually like copy the page, and if they made one mistake, they threw that page out, and they pulled down another blank page, and they started over until they copied it perfectly. The whole page. Okay? They had to copy it word for word, jot for jot, tittle for tittle, everything all the way down to the very end, and then next page. Okay? Took years to do this stuff. Okay? And like I said, if they made one mistake, they put one jot out of place, one tittle out of place, one word out of place, one word misspelled. They threw away the entire document, that entire page, and they started over. And yet, you want me to believe that that's a fairy tale and that your fairy tale is reality when you have no evidence, and you want us to believe fallible humans over divine inspiration. Yeah, no, not happening. Okay? I mean, it's so hypocritical. It is so hypocritical. And it just frustrates me to no end that these people don't even see the hypocrisy that they are perpetuating when they tell us this kind of stuff. And look, I don't have a problem with scientific standards in school because I learned science. No exclamation point, no quotation marks, no trademarked. I learned science when I went through my trade school, when I went into, different things. I learned chemistry and physics and some biology, and I learned some of these different things. And we learned enough that we were able to go into public school, and we were able to go through, because I went to a Catholic private school from the end of second grade, with about a month left in second grade, all the way through seventh grade, and then I went through eighth grade in public school, and I went through 5 years of high school. Okay, 2 years at one high school, 3 years at another. And I graduated with a high school diploma. Okay? And never once did we ever, outside of public school, in the private school, did we ever, focus an intense study on evolution. They just kind of gave us the broad strokes. And then in our religion classes, we learned about God and what He did for us, okay? We learned about His creation, the flood, that kind of stuff. Okay, but we learned about it throughout the school as we were learning other things. And again, we were told, make up your own mind. There were non-Christians that went to this private school. And they weren't you must believe. It was never that. It was just, here's what the Bible says. Here's what science, trademark exclamation point, says. Okay? You make up your mind. You believe what you want to believe. And if you want to know more about either one, here's some resources. Because we had encyclopedias, we had books on like dinosaurs and different things in the school library inside of a Catholic private school that had we had a whole section on Time Life books. Okay, in fact, I don't have it right here with me, but I still have the book, and it's literally like about the Grand Canyon, and it says, millions and millions of years it took to form the Grand Canyon, and we know that's wrong, okay, because water can't flow uphill, but that doesn't mention that in that book. But see, we were allowed to read those books, and then we were allowed to ask questions of the teachers to say, why is it that when we read the Bible and it tells us in Genesis chapter 7 through 9, it tells us this flood happened, or 6 through 9. It tells us this flood happened, and there was this man called Noah, and there was this thing happened, this thing happened. What's that all about? And then why is it that this book is saying millions and millions of years it carved the Grand Canyon? How do we reconcile the two? And the teacher was allowed to give us their opinion on what they thought happened. And we can accept that, we can add it to our data banks, and we can decide if that's what they're telling us is true or not. And we can make the decision, and we can say, no, I don't think that's right, or we can say, yeah, that sounds plausible. But this kind of cultish behavior, where they're saying, no, you have to believe in this, you have to believe it this way, and it's this way or the highway. It is tyrannical, and it is dictatorial, and it is very cultish. And they like to call us the cult. They like to point their fingers at us and say, well, you people all say the same thing, so it's like you're indoctrinated. And we get to sit there and go, no. If I'm quoting someone, okay, and I'm quoting from the same passage of the Bible that they are, and I'm saying, hey, this is this, this is this, this is this, this is what we believe. It's not because I'm indoctrinated or I'm living in a cult. It's I'm listening to someone every Sunday who's giving me a Bible verse, and he's preaching on the Bible verse, and then I listen to another person, like say Dr. John MacArthur, and Dr. John MacArthur is preaching on the same topic or similar topic, and he's using the same Bible passage, and he's saying much the same thing that my preacher's saying. And then I listen to Mike Winger, and he's telling me much the same thing. I listen to Ken Hovind, he's telling me much the same thing. I listen to What Do You Mean? John McCrae, he's telling me the same thing. I listen to David Wood, he's telling me the same thing. It's not that we're in an echo chamber, it's we're all reading the same book and coming to the same conclusions. Because I can go back and I can read the book, and I can listen to what they're saying, and I can read the passage, and I can say, is that saying to me the same thing that it's saying to them? And if it is, then it's truth. If it isn't, if we were all preaching, if we were all talking about the same passage, and we were all coming to different conclusions, it wouldn't be true. And that's exactly what evolution does. Okay? It's every single, like, Aaron Ra talks a certain way. Professor Dave says something completely different. P.Z. Myers, he talks a different way. And yet, they all want to say that they're all saying the same thing. But yet, there are scientists out there that are saying things that are different than what Aaron Ra says. So, for instance, when Aaron Ra stands there and says, oh, people like Kent Hovind and Matt Powell, they say that, evolutionists believe that we came from a rock, except that no evolutionist believes this. Yet, there are hundreds of papers and textbooks out there that teach that, yes, oceans, clouds formed, it rained on the rocks to form the oceans, and from those rocks, the minerals eroded into the sea, and out of that came life. So you do literally believe that you came from a rock, and yet they'll stand there and say, no, we don't believe that, no. Because they know it's stupid sounding, okay? And so they don't want to believe in that. And so they're disagreeing fundamentally with their own scientists in the community. And then there are some that will say, well, maybe there was a global flood at some point because we noticed that certain layers were laid down at certain times. And then other people will say, no, it was a series of local floods that happened at the same time because, the ice was melting, and so, it just created all these kind of local floods in these different places that kind of deposited, certain beds of sediments at the same time. How did that work? They don't know. They can't answer that. And so, and so nobody can reconcile that. And that's the problem. You guys are the ones that are living in the cult, and you guys don't even realize that you're doing it. Because, this is why I use, Scientology, Mormonism, and Jehovah's Witness, is because those three are probably the most egregious cults we have in the United States today, and in some cases the world. Scientology is definitely a cult, okay? They have very cult-like practices. Their practices are very, very, what they do to people, is very, very, cult-like. Mormons, they're a cult because they have their own specific book, because they say that the Bible was corrupted when it was translated, and that that all the different translations are evil and bad, and we can't rely on them, and so we have to look at this and we have to look at that. And so they try to force this sort of narrative of, see, we have this book called the Book of Mormon, and see, this is the truth. See, and then the Bible over here kind of contains a little bit of truth here and there, but we have to tell you what that truth is. But this Book of Mormon, even though it's full of falsehoods and plagiarism, it's the truth. Even though it's not. Now, they spend massive amounts of hours every single Sunday basically indoctrinating their own people into the cult of Mormonism by saying this is how the Book of Mormon works, and and they basically they train their children from the time that they're able to start reading and comprehending. They indoctrinate their children until they're out of high school, and they even get an hour off from school every single day in high school to go to their seminary, okay, right across the campus, or right across from the high school campus. They get an hour off every single day to go to their seminary, and they get to go and they get to do their training, their indoctrination, okay? Because when they get done, they go out for 2 years on a mission, which is they go to different cities all over the world. It's not just here in the United States. They'll go all over the world. And they get to go and they get to knock on people's doors. Hey, we're from the Mormon church. I'm Elder so-and-so, and this is Elder so-and-so. And, we're here to tell you about another testament of Jesus Christ. Okay? And they do that for 2 years. And then they leave and they go back to their home. And then they will typically go to college. Okay? Or sometimes they'll go to college and then go on mission. It kind of depends on how they want to do it, because they can either leave high school and go directly on mission, and sometimes they can go to college while they're on mission. But other times sometimes they'll go to college and then they'll go on mission. But anyway, the whole point is that they do that, and then basically, because they live in this echo chamber, okay. And then basically, once they get done with that, and in that time, while they're on mission and while they're doing all that stuff, they try to find a wife. Okay, they try to find a girl within the Mormon church, and then when they get back from their mission, they get married to that woman, and then they start having babies. Okay, and they're told you have to have lots of babies if you want to make it into heaven, because there's like a sliding scale on points, and if you have, if you were a good Mormon growing up, you get this many points, and if you went on mission and you converted so many people, you get this many points, and if you married, and they got this many points, and if you got married in the temple, you get a few more points, and then if you have like 10 kids, you got this many points. If you only have 5 kids, you got that many points. You see what I'm saying? Okay, it's all a point system, and if you got enough points in their belief system, okay, because they believe in a pantheon of gods, you get to go to like a high heaven, and in that high heaven, you get assigned a world, and you and your wife get to basically have eternal sex, and she gets to have spirit babies that will populate that world. So they believe that the God of this world, okay, that whom we call God the Father in this book, they believe is a God who somewhere on some other planet attained enough points to get to a certain point, and then he came here and populated the world with spirit babies. That's what Mormons believe, by the way. Okay? So that's why we call them a cult, is because they're not believing in this. They believe in their Book of Mormon with a little bit of this stuff sprinkled in. Okay? Because if you sprinkle enough lies with half-truths, then people will swallow it. And it's the same thing with Jehovah's Witnesses. Although Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in the spirit baby thing and, doing the point system and all that kind of stuff, Jehovah's Witnesses, they retranslated the Bible to change every single instance of Yahweh, or what a lot of translations translate as Lord, as Jehovah. Okay? They've also changed a lot of passages in the Bible in their translation called the New World Translation. And then they are taught that why they're called Jehovah's Witnesses is because in the book of Revelation there is 144,000 witnesses, and it's 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel, okay, of Jacob, that will be called during the end times. And the Jehovah's Witnesses believe that they are those 144,000 witnesses, okay, which is false because they're not, because a lot of them are not from the tribe of Judah, okay, and they have their own Watchtower magazine that they're basically given issues of and told to read. They have their own software now that they can cross-reference anything. So if they type in a word, it will give them Watchtower articles up the wazoo that all of their Kingdom Hall people have written. And they do the same thing as Mormons. They sit from the time that they're knee-high to a grasshopper all the way up to adulthood. They are indoctrinated into that religion, and they are marinated in it. And I'm glad that The Truth Hurts got out from underneath that. Okay, I said that in my Truth Hurts rebuttal video. I said, dude, I'm glad you're not a Jehovah's Witnesses anymore, but what you've traded up for is worse than what you believed before. Because now you're saying there is no God, there is no nothing, we just evolved from monkeys and goop. Okay? And that's why I'm saying that evolution is a cult, is because they're basically trying to indoctrinate kids from the time that they're babies all the way up until adulthood that they're nothing more than just puddles of goop. Even though they have no proof that that's what happened. Okay?
Granted, ACE is supposed to be beholden to certain regulations as well, and that is just not happening. In general, there is just nowhere near enough oversight. This has been 40 years, this education system has been going, and just ruining kids' lives, making them believe in and susceptible to more conspiracy theories.
Okay. No, it's not. This is what atheists do. They conflate this notion of, I found one article of one woman who had a problem because they probably changed the standards, not that the ACE curriculum was wrong. It's they changed the standards, and so therefore every single thing in this is wrong. And I'm sitting there saying, no, that is a generalization fallacy. Because I could say, despite the evidence to the contrary, I could say evolution has been ruining people's lives for the past 50 years. Am I correct? Yes. But that's because we have data to back that up. Okay? Especially here in the United States. I'm pretty sure the UK probably has similar statistics. Okay? But ever since the Cold War reconstruction of America's education system, okay, we have seen crime rates skyrocket, we have seen school shootings skyrocket, we have seen teen pregnancies, drug use, okay, in America skyrocket, okay. Because when you tell people that they're no better than animals and that they evolved from slime and that their only purpose is to go out, pass on their genes because you're here today, tomorrow you die, there is no purpose to your life, don't be surprised when people act like fucking animals. Duh. We as Christians have been saying that for years. And it's all evolution's fault. Because they basically, when they put evolution in, okay, because we used to teach this in school. And we used to tell people, we'd give them some evolution, we'd give them some Bible, and we'd say, believe what you want. We don't care. We're just giving you everything. And now, it's believe or die. That's literally what they're doing. And it's pathetically stupid because they have no evidence to back up their theory. But they try to preach it as if it is truth. And they ignore the mountains of evidence for this book. Because they know that if they actually taught that this book was true, at least most of the stories that we know of in this book are true, well, that changes things, doesn't it? Because now, perhaps there is a God. Perhaps there was things like there have been secular historians that proved that Jesus was a real historical figure. And that he really lived in Israel around the time that the Bible places him. There really was a governor of Judea named Pontius Pilate. There really was a ruler in Judea named Herod Antipas. There was a person named John the Baptist who was baptizing people in the Jordan River. There was a historical figure named Yeshua, Jesus, of Nazareth. He was born in the town of Nazareth. He lived in Egypt for a while and then came back. They know this. Secular historians know this. There's a thing out there called the Jesus Project, and it literally set out to try to see if Jesus was fact or fiction. And they ended up saying, we have enough evidence, like historical records, anthropological evidence, archaeological evidence, that there was a man who lived in Judea, and there were people that lived in Judea around that time that are mentioned in the Bible, contemporary to that period. There was a man named Yeshua who is now translated as Jesus. We can't deny that. Now, their question of was he divine, was he this, was he that, fine. You can debate that all you want. But the fact of the matter is, there was an actual person, and he was crucified by the Romans. And his body disappeared from a tomb. We know that. We know that. And that's the point. Okay? We know that the book of Daniel happened because we have cuneiform cylinders, okay, from Babylon that actually talk about events that happened in the book of Daniel. From the other side, from Babylon's point of view, okay? Things that happen. And we're like, whoa, that's insane. Because there's people going, yeah, we threw these 3 guys into a furnace and we don't know how they're still alive. And yeah, we threw this one guy, Daniel, in a lion's den, okay? And the next morning, he was still alive. We don't know what happened. We don't know how that is. These lions haven't eaten in like 3 days, and he's still alive. Usually everybody we throw in there, the lions rip apart within like 30 seconds. We threw him in there, and the lion sat there and did nothing. What is going on here? Like, literally, that's what the cuneiform tablets are saying. Okay? You can go to the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. and see all of this evidence for yourself. Okay? And we have the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the Dead Sea Scrolls prove that somebody had the original Hebrew documents and translated them into the language of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Okay? Because when we translated the Dead Sea Scrolls into different languages, like we translated them into Hebrew, we've translated them into English, we've translated them into French, we translated them, and they perfectly match up with other translations that we have of the Bible, especially the Hebrew one. Okay? It's almost a word-for-word translation of the Hebrew, which means that somebody was literally looking at the Hebrew and then translating it into the language that the Dead Sea Scrolls were written in, which is why the Dead Sea Scrolls was such a find, because it is the earliest example of the Old Testament that we have in the world anywhere. Okay? Outside of a couple of manuscripts in Israel. They're like, we look at it and we go, my God, these things are old, and they perfectly represent exactly what it says in here. Like, word for word. How are we supposed to dismiss that as being a fantasy or a fairy tale? That's not. That's actual physical evidence that the Bible is real and true. I mean, it's just... your willing ignorance of this is stupid. And the other part of it is that I can guarantee you, as I've stated before, that when people have educational standards, they literally take those standards and they have to meet those standards, and then they have to send it in to the place and say, does this meet your standard? And the people go, phew. So I can guarantee you that yes, the oversight is there, because if they were doing something, if there was a mass of people in the UK, not just one person or 5 people or 10 people, if there was a rash of people that were using this system that were not meeting standards, I can guarantee you that the standards board would be out there looking around going, why are people failing all of these standards? And they would be going back and forth, and they would be looking at these programs, and if they found it to be inadequate, you can bet that they would be shouting it from the rooftops. Don't use this program. It's not going to help your kids get to where they need to be. But yet, Emma's going to stand there and say, there's not enough oversight. People are failing all the time. Hey, you don't know that. You've cherry-picked one article about one person that had to take a few remedial classes to catch up in biology so that she could pass and get into university. She was discriminated against because she didn't meet the standards set forth by some arbitrary committee. Precisely because she was on this ACE education system. That's wrong. You should be arguing in the opposite direction. Why did they go and change the standards without telling ACE so that ACE could make the changes so that people could keep up with the standard changes?
At the very least, if GCSEs were a legal requirement, the students would have to learn mainstream science, at least to that level. At least they would get an alternative viewpoint, a reasonable alternative viewpoint created by experts in the field. It is so clear from what we've looked at from the ACE textbooks. The writers of the textbooks are either no science education or they've completely foregone it.
No, that's not true. Because what you're doing is you're looking at it through the lens of, I believe evolution is the only thing. And it's the only thing that should be taught in schools. And when someone wants to present an alternative viewpoint, and they want to kind of gloss over, like just say, here's the basics of evolution, let's move on. Now you're saying, oh, that's just wrong and evil, and they don't understand science, and that's not mainstream science. No, mainstream science is things like actual physics, actual chemistry, actual biology. Okay, like I remember when I was a kid, we got a little bit of potting soil in a Dixie cup. Okay, and we got a little seed, and we put our finger down inside the Dixie cup, and then we dropped the seed in there, okay, in the potting soil, and then we would put the thing over the top. And every day we would put our name on it, and we'd water it every single day, and we would watch it grow. And while we were watching it grow, we were sitting there. And the teacher was saying, here's photosynthesis. Here's how things grow. Here's how things happen. Here's this. Here's that. And we were learning about it, and then we were watching it in action. And then we'd be able to take it home to our parents and say, look, we made this little plant grow. We got the little seed, we put it in the potting soil, and we were learning about photosynthesis, and so we were learning about this stuff, so we were watching it as the sun was growing, and we were watching it as it was growing towards the sun, blah, blah, blah. That's mainstream science. You don't have to learn the theory of evolution to learn science. Okay? Because science means knowledge, literally. Okay? And it's from the Greek word scientia, and it's from the Latin word scire, which means to know. Okay? And that's all it was. It was originally created by people who were just trying to study God's world and say, what is it with all this stuff? How does this all work? And that's it. That's all they were doing. And yet, you're going to stand there and say, no, everything has to be how I want it to be. It can't be any other way. Ha! That's cult-like behavior.
What they've written. Dr. Scaramanga said, the children who are being deprived of an education because of this system matter. They deserve better. It might be that there are very few of them, but they matter because every child matters.
If every child matters, then why are you teaching children that they're no better than animals? That they have no purpose for their life? I mean, Jesus said to his disciples, things that cause people to sin are bound to come, but woe to that person through whom they come. It would be better for him to be thrown into the sea with a millstone tied around his neck, for than him to cause one of these little ones to sin. So watch yourselves. Think about it. You're literally causing children to sin. You say children matter, but you act like the children have to obey your every whim when it comes to evolution. And that's wrong, because it's causing them to lose their faith in God. It's causing them to lose their purpose. It's causing them to act like animals, and yet you sit there and go, oh, every child matters. No, it doesn't. No, they don't. Stop. And I mean, this Dr. Scaramanga, just because she has a PhD behind her name, doesn't make her some kind of, expert on anything. Okay? It really doesn't. Because these children, if the ACE curriculum was indeed that bad, then these children wouldn't be making it anywhere in life, and yet children are making it everywhere on this program. Because you haven't shown anything besides one article, one cherry-picked article about one student that had a problem on this. And that's it. You have nothing. You really don't.
And I couldn't agree more. It is so easy, especially with conspiracy theories, and especially on the internet when it's easy and anonymous to point and laugh at silly things. It's so easy to look at people who believe crazy conspiracy theories and go, you fool! How could you believe something so ridiculous? So many of these people are isolated in these systems that don't give them any other opportunity. And that's not fair. The way to deal with conspiracy theories is, like many things, it's preventative.
Okay. So, I'm going to point out right here that Emma's being a hypocrite. Because so many times she has been on live streams with people like Aaron Ra, P.Z. Myers, and other big-named pop atheists out there, pointing and laughing at Christians for what we believe in, and when we poke holes in their theory, and they sit there and go, "Oh, we don't believe that kind of stuff, har har har." And she's trying to say that we as Christians, pointing and laughing at them for their belief in this, basically a conspiracy theory of evolution, is hypocritical. And by the way, I'm not pointing and laughing. Don't think I'm doing that. Okay? I'm raising legitimate points that I'm hoping people take to heart and try to find out for themselves. Is this what I truly believe? Is this something that I need to really look at? How can I find out what is true? Be it the Bible, be it evolution, be it whatever I believe, how can I find out if that's true or not? And as I've said, Christians are a hell of a lot more open-minded than people like her. We really are. Even though people call us closed-minded. We're not. We're very open-minded. We're closed-minded about sinful behaviors and sinful desires. But when we look at how this stuff works, we're trying to say what you're doing here is bad. And you need to change that. Because that's the point of the gospel, is you're heading down the wrong path, and we're trying to steer you back around and get you on the right path. But the choice is yours. You want to keep going down that path, keep going down that path. But don't sit there and be a hypocrite and say, "Oh, it's easy for people to stand there and laugh and point and laugh at people about conspiracy theories," when you do the same thing. That's hypocritical. Extremely hypocritical. Okay? And this is not a conspiracy theory, folks. Because again, it's a time-tested, archaeologically, anthropologically, historically backed document that is true. Your willing ignorance doesn't just, throw that all out. You may dismiss it, but it doesn't dismiss this, okay? You can try, but you can't, okay? And I've told people before, okay, you don't think the Bible's true? Then go out and prove that it isn't true. Go on. Go prove that it isn't true. Be like Lee Strobel's. Be like Josh McDowell. Go out and show me that it's not truth. That there's no evidence to back it up. And I guarantee you will find mountains of evidence.
It's to have the education system in place to allow them to identify conspiracy theories, to allow them to identify bad sources from good sources, and B, to force dodgy systems, I'm sorry, but dodgy systems like this accelerated Christian education to comply with basic education requirements.
They do. Because, as I said before, I can guarantee you that there's a checklist of standards that independent standards board that you talked about a couple parts ago, okay, put in place. And that ACE has to meet every single one of those standards. When they send a book to those people, they say, "Here, make sure it meets your standards." And those people read through the material. Does it meet the standards? Yes, it does. Bam, approved. They send it back. Because I can guarantee you, if they didn't, and people were failing in droves, like you haven't proved, if people were in fact failing in droves, then I guarantee you that there would be more inquiries, and there would be people saying no, and there would be lawsuits of, people saying, like the Independent Standards Board saying, no, you can't put that our you meet our standards because you don't meet our standards. You have to take that down from your website. There would have been a court battle. There would have been other things. There would have been, articles written on that because, as you stated, okay, when that Sky News article, wrote into Ace, asking about that kind of stuff, Ace didn't respond. Okay? And that's not because Ace is going, oh no, they found us out. No. That was one student. And if they put back in a statement that was one student, the standards changed, blah, 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 I can guarantee you that Sky News would have been like, oh, they just say that was one student, but we found others. And they would have probably gone out and tried to find a bunch of other people. Okay? So that they could prove that, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that Ace is the worst thing ever. Because that's their bias. That's your bias, Emma. So, no. Again, this kind of, you have to teach it our way or the highway, is cult behavior. Because as Christians, we're not saying that you can't teach evolution the way that you want to teach evolution. We've never said that. We just said, why don't you teach all of it? Why don't you teach evolution, intelligent design, creationism? Teach the strengths and weaknesses of each, and let people decide for themselves. Oh no, we can't do that. No, you have to teach this one theory because that's our theory and it's our way or the highway. And you call us the cult? Ha!
These children do deserve better. They deserve to have the opportunity not to grow into an isolated conspiracy monger,
Most people don't. Most Christians, at least here in America, I don't know about over in the UK, but at least here in America, not many of them are conspiracy theorists. Yes, there's the odd one that believes in flat earth, and there's probably some that believe that our government is out to kill everybody, okay? But by and large, most people are not conspiracy theorists. Most of the people that I go to church with don't sit around and discuss conspiracy theories every Sunday. Okay? We're not doing that. We're just listening to our preacher preach on the Sermon on the Mount. And then we talk for a little bit and go home. That's it. That's all it is. You make it sound like every single Christian in the world is some evil conspiracy theorist that's going to try to make everybody believe in it's just the Bible and it's just this. The hell are you talking? Just because you, once upon a time, were a conspiracy theorist, doesn't mean that every single person in the world is.
This biblical literalism already is very us and them. It's very othering. The world outside is sinful and scary and dangerous, and you shouldn't listen to those other perspectives. You should just listen to us.
No, that's not what we teach. That's not how that. You obviously have never been inside of a church. Or if you were inside of a church, it was the wrong church. Probably the Anglican church or a Catholic church. Because, yes, they try to teach that stuff to their kids when they're young, but as they get older and they start to learn more, they start to broaden that out, okay? And I can tell you from experience that a lot of people in the church today have actually never really read this. Okay? They believe it, but they've never really sat down and read it, cover to cover. By and large. I'm not saying it's every single one, but there's a lot out there that haven't. Okay? And so the whole point of that is that now we come down to a thing where when you have people that don't really understand that, the only way to really teach them is to actually sit them down and teach them, this is what you need to do. This is how you have to read the Bible. This is what you have to read it without the lens of the world. You have to read it from a standpoint of this. Because otherwise, you start to read and you start to go, oh, well, see over here in 1 Peter it says, 1,000 years is a day and a day is 1,000 years. Yeah, but that's just because God is not bound by time, space, or matter. He's outside of that. Okay? And so, he's not looking at our, he's not looking at our stuff and saying, this is the way that things should be. Okay? And that's the point, is that there's a lot of people that when you ask them basic Bible questions, even Christians that go to church every single Sunday, you ask them basic Bible questions, they can't answer them. Because they don't read this, okay? And that's a failure not only of the church, but also of the parents, and the things. Sometimes people become Christians, their parents are still atheists, and they don't know what to read, they don't know how to read, they try reading, and they just kind of can't get into it. And that's fine. They need like some kind of a reading plan, or they need some kind of a help to get them there. Okay? But they also have a lot of questions that need answering. So they're going to come to church and they're going to be asking hard questions. And that's okay. We're there for them. That's why we do this kind of stuff, is so that when people have these questions, we can try to answer those questions for them. Okay? But if I go to a school and I say you should be teaching not just that evolution does this, does that. You should be teaching the flaws of evolution. You should be teaching that, yes, there were parts of it that were a hoax. There were parts of it that we cannot prove. We've done these experiments, and these experiments only showed this. It didn't show that. But you don't do that. So again, it's a little hypocritical to stand there and point your finger at Christians and say, oh, you Christians, you only teach this, you only do that, you create this us versus them. Haven't you? You're a bigger cult than we are. Because we're not a cult. We're fairly open about this stuff. Because we want people to understand both sides of the argument. You don't. You're coming at it from the standpoint of, oh, religion, bad. Especially Christianity.
Already preparing people to be hugely isolated, and that makes it so hard to break out of that thinking. So for us, it's also important to try and have a bit of compassion, a bit of understanding, because it's not really their fault. The children that went through this education system aren't to blame for what they were taught. It becomes very difficult because, of course, at least the majority of the parents giving their children this particular education also believe they are doing the right thing. They believe on a spiritual level, on a fundamental level, that they are protecting their children from the worst of the world.
No, that's not what they're doing. What they're trying to do is they're trying to give their kids the view of the world through the lens, the worldview of the Bible. Because your worldview depends on how you view the world at large. Emma's worldview is evolution is the only way, and we should be teaching that, and that's it. Christians believe that God created the world, and that He did it in 6 days, that there was a giant flood that destroyed everything. And so when a parent chooses something like the ACE curriculum, they are trying to have their children view the world through this lens, through the lens of the Bible. Okay? Because if you're not viewing, because how you view the world, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to give their kids a solid foundation to stand on, so that if at some point their kids enter into the public school system or go to college or whatever, that they understand that they have this good faith foundation here that is backed up by history, science, math, all that, so that when they go in there and people try to challenge their faith, they have an answer for it, so that they don't fall away. Because so many kids do end up falling away, especially in colleges today, because colleges are such indoctrination camps that kids, unless they have a very, very, very firm foundation in the Bible, they absolutely will fall away. absolutely will fall away from their faith. Okay? It's like a 75% loss rate right now for kids going to college from high school, okay, that are Christian, because their faith isn't solidly rooted in the Bible. And so, because they've been conditioned for 6 hours a day in school that, this is this is that, your faith is stupid, your faith sucks, Christianity is wrong, evolution is the only way, we're just puddles of goo, blah, blah, blah. And they get bombarded by that. And so they get away from the church, because they go to church every Sunday and they hear their friends, they hear their preachers, they hear their youth directors, they hear all these different people who try to reaffirm their faith, but then they go to college and they don't have that. And pretty soon people start chipping away at their faith and they don't have anyone to help them. They don't have anywhere to go to ask questions, because they can go to a preacher at their local church when they're in high school or elementary school, and they can say, "Preacher, I don't understand. What's going on with this? What is this? What is that? How does this work? How do I reconcile this fact with this fact? How do I, because I read this in the Bible, but they're telling me this and I don't understand." And the pastor will usually be able to say, "Yeah, because the world says this, the world says, but this is what the Bible says, and the Bible is truth, son or daughter, whatever, and this is how it works." But that's not happening in the colleges, and so people are falling away from their faith, and it's wrong. Because those type of viewpoints are not being presented at all, unless you take certain classes, and even then, it's done from a secular point of view, like my Sacred Books of the World class, where we studied the Bible from a secular point of view. And so, we would read certain passages and do certain things. But it made me realize something. That the Bible is the only thing that has an answer for your sin. None of the other religions have an answer for your sin. Not even Islam. They call it a struggle, because you have an internal struggle and an external struggle. The internal struggle is you against your sin nature, and the external struggle is, you against the unbeliever, but they don't have a true belief in that, okay? I'm sorry this video went so long, but I feel because when I was talking the last time, I felt like there were some points that I should have made, and so I've been making those points, but I needed to get this out. Like I said, I'm wanting to get done with this, and there's only about a minute left, so I'm just going to let this play, and then when we get to that point, we will stop.
Something that I often think. This is, I guess, a mix of my personal opinion and my understanding of the Bible. I understand why it would be tempting to isolate your child from all the potential sin and danger and misinformation in the world. However, from a biblical perspective and just from a reasonable person perspective, if I were a Christian, it would seem to me far more likely and far more effective for a false prophet, for a false teacher to infiltrate Christian education systems than it would the entirety of the globe, the entirety of mainstream education, science, all across the world. What better way to mislead Christians than to target them when they're young with the voice of a preacher, speaking for God? Just something to think about.
This frustrates me more than anything else, is when atheists who probably never actually read the Bible, have no clue what the Bible actually says, and don't really know what we believe, because they, quote, used to be a Christian, and now I'm not, but if I were a Christian, then this is what you would do. Not necessarily. Okay? Because there are plenty of scientists out there, actual physical scientists out there, that believe in this book. They believe it literally. Are they a conspiracy theorist? They have pieces of paper behind their name. Like, for instance, Dr. Norm Jeanson. There's a lot of archaeologists and anthropologists and historians working at Answers in Genesis. people with PhDs, people with college degrees that work there that set up the entire Ark experience. Ark Encounter. Okay? Like, are they conspiracy theorists? Are they false prophets? No. Because they believe in this. They're not perverting it. Now, are there false prophets within Christianity? Yes. Hell yes. Joel Osteen, T.D. Jakes, Stephen Furtick. I could go on and on. Okay? There are a bunch of them out there. Okay? But they're not the ones writing the Christian education system. At least they shouldn't be. If they are, then I would probably write that person and tell them, no, you shouldn't be using this person because they don't actually believe in the Bible. They believe in a perverted Bible called the prosperity gospel. Okay? And the postmodern hippie Jesus. They don't believe in what we believe. Okay? And it frustrates me to no end when atheists try to tell us what we believe. You're not a Christian, Emma. She's not a Christian. If you're allowing her to try to tell you what you believe, then you're being misled by a false prophet. Because she has no clue what the Bible actually says. She doesn't have the Holy Spirit. She's not reading the Bible every single day. She's not studying the Bible. She's just reading it through the lens of her secular humanism and her atheism and her evolution. And that's wrong. Stop. Enough is enough. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment below, let me know what you thought of this series so far. I have another video of hers waiting in the wings, so I'll probably watch that this weekend and kind of, look at it and see what's going on. And then next week I'll jump into that one as well as the Christy Burke. And when I'm done with those, I'll try to jump back in and do the Left Foot Media Redux. Try to get that one done because I shouldn't have that much time left on that, and we'll go from there. Okay. And I've also kind of been thinking I'm probably going to start jumping back in and doing some DVD reviews every once in a while as well. So, as we say, we will see you on the next one.